Welcome back to Too Many Books, the DC comic review show here on Radium Theatre Productions. My name's Dylan. Please remember to like and subscribe to the channel. And let's begin. We've got a bunch of books this week, kicking it off with Aquaman The Becoming. If you remember a few weeks ago, I reviewed on this show the Black Manta miniseries. The first issue of it, I said I wasn't a massive Aquaman fan generally, but in reading that first issue, I was kind of like, I don't really know what's going on. Aquaman The Becoming is very different. I got to the end of this and I was like, this is so awesome. I also find it's kind of weird because they put it under the DC Pride banner. And they're kind of like focusing on it's kind of like you would think that it would be focusing more on the fact that you kind of have a gay Aqualad and stuff, the other thing. But it really is. This is just a regular Aquaman comic. And it is, he's out at like kind of lunch or something with his mom, and there's like a cute boy that he flirts with. But like ultimately, this is like Aqualad is training with Aquaman in this like VR simulation in Atlantis, where he's kind of like fighting. He defeats the program, finishes the program where he has to kind of like defeat Darkseid, which maybe might mean that he'll show up at some point in like an Infinite Frontier sequel thing. But regardless, having this as this, like it's pretty much like an Aquaman series, right? It's the general tension of Aquaman is he's a man of the land and of the sea, and as and the fights between, or the tension between Aquaman and Atlantis is always something that in the Aquaman stuff that I've read that I've always really appreciated. And the solicitations for this kind of ruin the ending, but it sets up Aqualad or the new Aquaman in this conflict with Atlantis. I really enjoyed this. I wasn't really sure exactly what to expect. There's kind of a setup for this in the Aquaman 80th anniversary. But if you are looking for an Aquaman series, if you're a fan of Aquaman, highly recommend this. It's really beautiful art. And I really am interested to see where this goes over the course of the 6-issue series, and how it's going to set up the new status quo for Aquaman, and whether or not it'll kind of like link in with that Black Manta series. And we'll see kind of what happens going forward. Highly recommend checking it out. Aquaman The Becoming #1. Also worth checking out is Batman the Detective #5, which is the penultimate issue of the Tom Taylor, mostly Andy Kubert arc. It's kind of set after the death of Alfred. You have Bruce goes back to Europe, picking up with his allies and stuff from Batman Incorporated, and we finally get to kind of see the motivation of the antagonist, which is throughout the series. Essentially, if you haven't been reading it, we have this person who's been going around and killing people that Batman has previously saved. And what turns out is that, the reason why they're doing this is because somebody that Batman saved went on to kind of do violence to the antagonist. And consequently, their way of trying to create order is to go, well, when Batman saves somebody, that's actually against the natural order, and I can kind of undo this, which is kind of... It's like an odd motivation for a villain, but it's ultimately something that I think is really interesting. The art is absolutely fantastic. There's a sequence in which, using this truck thing on the front cover, Batman saves a collection of people from being assassinated. It's really cool. The panel, when you read it, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's, as I said, second last issue. Tom Taylor, everything he does, he's just like kicking stuff out of the park. Nightwing, which we'll be talking about a little bit later, his Superman Son of Kal-El is also absolutely terrific. And Batman the Detective this is his first comic writing normal Batman. I think he did a annual a little while ago, but having this space to really flesh out, this is an arc I want to tell about Bruce, is really, really awesome. You got like Knight, there's a appearance of like Knight and Squire. It's really, really, really good. If you haven't been checking out the series, you might want to wait for the trade. Otherwise, certainly worth your time going and checking it out because, it's absolutely great. I'm really enjoying it. Next up, we have Flash 774. I've kind of previously talked about how the Flash was something that I was a bit reticent about, like the new run with Wally West when it first came in. I thought I liked the idea of kind of the Flash quantum leap, where you have Wally going through all of these different speedsters throughout time and kind of like dealing with this crisis within the Speed Force. There's always some sort of crisis with the Speed Force, but the changes in the art and the ultimate kind of retconning of Heroes in Crisis, which I'm a huge fan of, kind of puts me in the minority, but I very much like it. The retconning of that I thought was kind of a little bit unfortunate. The second arc, where there's kind of a couple issues dealing with Heatwave, I understand there was kind of a little bit of criticism around how it was Barry Allen, Wally West is essentially the same thing. What I really like about this title is that this is a pure Wally West book. We have Wally's now working for Terrifitech as his kind of like cover job. There is a robbery of Terrifitech by somebody who essentially puts everybody in Central City to sleep, and Wally is essentially because of him and Irie, who his daughter, have these kind of like ultra fast metabolisms. They're able to operate at a normal level while everybody else is asleep. They kind of like stop the robbery or whatever, and it's very much like a Silver Age kind of one and done type of thing. But what I really liked about it is that the relationship between Wally and Irie and the exploration of, that was what led to Heroes in Crisis. It's what the kind of like the pain that Wally was feeling after returning in Rebirth, of kind of like, I don't have my family, I don't have these connections and stuff, which was so integral to the kind of Mark Waid and Jeff Johns runs. To have him finally with his family, going off and kind of being very much Wally, I really enjoyed. Really recommend, if you haven't been reading the rest of the series and you're looking to kind of like, if you're either looking to tip your toe into the Flash again, if you're an old like lapsed reader, or if you're just looking to kind of like, Wally West is the Flash, I wouldn't mind, checking out to see what that is. This is really like a title that'll do you a lot of well. It's, as I said, one and done. Final panel sets up like a future story, but like this as a single issue, Flash 774, really, really enjoying it. As I said, it took me a while to get into Jeremy Adams' run, but now that it's starting to kind of like, progress a little bit, I'm really starting to enjoy the direction that he's going, especially now that like what Barry is like on Earth 2 in Multiverse 2, kind of running on a treadmill or something. It's nice to kind of have like this is the only Flash, and so we can really lean into making him the Flash that he is, rather than the Flash is a mantle and it's really doesn't matter who the person is inside of the suit. Because ultimately, if Wally is the Flash, he should be like when Dick Grayson was Batman, it's kind of like the fun version of that character, whereas Barry is much more maudlin and serious and this, that, the other thing. Flash 774, as I said, if you haven't been reading The Flash, really worth giving this one a check out. Continuing on with other things that you should check out, Shazam, number 3. I was never a huge Shazam person until it always seemed like he was literally a rip-off of Superman. He was obviously very popular in the 40s and the 50s, but, like a lot of that kind of golden age and silver age stuff, it's very much of its time. And as a character, he's got the wisdom of Solomon and the strength of Heracles and all of this kind of stuff. That Shazam is kind of very, it's a really awesome idea, but it was never something that really spoke to me. When I first kind of got into comics like 15 years ago, I started reading 52, and 52 was, that has a lot of Black Adam in it. And so there's that kind of the lore of Shazam, but there wasn't really like, it's Billy Batson and he says Shazam and he turns into Shazam. This is kind of coming out of Teen Titans Academy. So you have Billy is at the Teen Titans Academy, and we get to see how the other students at the academy are kind of jealous of Billy because of the fact that he interacts with the members of the Titans as an equal, essentially. And I really enjoyed what it's essentially kind of Billy and his friend Dane are continuing kind of walking through, this kind of other dimension, looking for the Rock of Eternity so that Billy can find out what has happened to his powers, because his powers are waning. When he says Shazam, he doesn't get his powers. And Neron, who's kind of like a trickster, essentially kind of who feeds on kind of the like youth, offers to help Billy and Dane. And yeah, it's really, it's enjoyable. Like it's not like the best book that I read, or this, that, the other thing, but it is a story that whilst reading it, I'm like, this is really interesting. This is something that I, don't have a lot of familiarity with. And typically when you read a Batman comic or a Superman comic, there's a lot of, I know the tropes and this, that, the other thing. And I really think that this series is doing a lot to kind of make a character that you might not have a lot of connection to have like a meaning, I suppose. And yeah, it's Raven is obviously on the front cover. They spoil a lot on the front covers of comic books nowadays, but Raven shows up, and we get to see the dynamic explored, and I really do appreciate that. And it's certainly worth checking out if you're already reading it, or if you're a Teen Titans Academy fan. It's very much in that vein of, teenagers and kids, and kind of, as I said, I enjoyed it. King Shark, the Suicide Squad book. This was the first half of this was in the Suicide Squad Free Comic Book Day issue, and what I can say as a compliment to this is that I read the first half of it a couple ensure that she has made a deal. Amanda Waller has made a deal with King Shark's family. Essentially, she's allowed to keep him in prison as long as every few years he's allowed to return to like his forefathers in the ocean. And essentially, because of the fact that King Shark has grown, has taken a liking to Defacer, Defacer's like the collateral to ensure that King Shark will return. And I really did appreciate that. It's similar to the relationship between King Shark and Ratcatcher 2 in the Suicide Squad film. However, they managed to avoid, because this is not the Sylvester Stallone kind of hand, and I'm Sylvester Stallone. Hello, that's terrible Sylvester Stallone accent. But like, he is smart, and he's able to kind of form thoughts, and you get to see him interact with his father. And the idea from the Suicide Squad comics and from Swamp Thing is that Amanda Waller wants to get control of the Green, right? And we have like her talking to Peacemaker about this new idea, which is the Red, which is, you know, the lifeblood of creatures on the planet. And there's like essentially like the alpha, for lack of a better word, of every species on the planet has to kind of go to like fight on behalf of their own species to guarantee their perpetuation for another millennia. Kind of similar to what Josh Williamson's doing over on Robin, in terms of it seems like it's going to be like a fighting competition. But yeah, it's interesting. This is a weird book. Not gonna lie, it's a weird book. But the art's beautiful. I mean, look at that king shark. Look at those king shark abs. It's really, really, really interesting. Really, really cool. And it really does show that DC really is leaning into synergy. They are a big fan of making sure that you know that there was a movie, Suicide Squad, recently, and that King Shark was the breakout character. And the executives watched the movie and went, King Shark is pretty cool. Hey, you there, Mr. Lee, can you please get one of the people on your staff to make us a King Shark comic so we can kind of bank on that brand awareness. And it works, and it's enjoyable. And I picked it up because I friggin' like loved Sylvester Stallone as King Shark. And yeah, as I said, it's not that version of King Shark, but you don't really want to watch that, right? You don't want to watch, you don't want to watch like a rehash of the Ratcatcher to King Shark relationship, and B, having this kind of like, you know, child, like the King Shark with the kind of the intelligence of like a child or like a small animal. You're not really going to have a lot of emotional development over the course of a 6-issue mini. So I do appreciate having King Shark still kind of being emotionally stunted, but not being like a complete and total moron, for lack of a better word. Totally worth checking out. If you're a Suicide Squad fan. One of the things that is weird is that they've returned to the Harley Quinn is in Belle Reve. She's dressed in a prison uniform. She's doing these classes, or they're like therapy sessions, even though she's not in Belle Reve anymore. It says President's Day. Maybe it's just before she was like let out at the end of the last series, except that doesn't make sense in terms of the thing with Peacekeeper. Anyways, there's always been the kind of like, how is Harley like in this kind of quantum state of being in prison and being in Gotham at the same time? And it's nice to see that kind of dynamic return in the Suicide Squad King Shark. I think they really wanted to they needed somebody to do therapy, and they're like, why don't we just get Harley? Because she's in the Suicide Squad. Oh, she's a therapist. Oh. It's a good way to kind of like, it's a good use of that character. Even though they're trying to kind of like tie it into, what seems like they're kind of like connecting it to the Suicide Squad Swamp Thing arc. But yeah, very much worth checking out. But in terms of things that are absolutely like, by God, what like you need to. Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, number 4. This is the halfway point of Tom King and Bilquis Evely's Supergirl series. Essentially, it's true grit in space. You have this little girl. Her father was killed by this guy named Clem of the High Hills or something, and he's joined this kind of like intergalactic, gang of bandits, and they're kind of going planet to planet, just kind of killing and pillaging and this, that, the other thing. And we get to see Supergirl fight against that kind of this certain sense of impotence, essentially, which is that they're always like one step behind. They're always getting to these planets, and I think there's like a half a dozen different planets that they kind of are just too late to have stopped the massacres on. And you get to see, and because it's all told through the narration of the young girl, you get to see her describe the young girl who's now grown up. It's like kind of like she's looking back kind of like 50, 60 years in the past or whatever, and having that, I've really, really dug. Seeing Supergirl just absolutely heartbroken, essentially, at her own impotence, as I said. And there's a beautiful scene in which her and the young Supergirl and the young girl have an argument, essentially, where Supergirl's like, I'm going to send you home. Like, I'm going to catch up to these people, and like, you shouldn't be around, but like, the things that I've seen, they go to a planet and there's like video cameras or whatever, and like Supergirl's like, you stay out here, I'm going to go. And she comes out and she's like white as a ghost. And she's like, I'm going to go, and this is my responsibility to go and deal with these people. And I really, it's powerful, right? Having this story about like horrible violence. And Supergirl is this character who, she watched her planet die. She was forged in pain and suffering, and seeing, kind of Supergirl see her young self reflected in the anger of, this child who's looking to avenge her father. It's really, really, really clever. And they kind of, it's like an admonishment. And it's really heartbreaking, ultimately. And if you haven't been reading this series, it's probably going to be the best of the year, one of the best of the year. And yeah, really recommend, if you haven't, even if you haven't, pick this up, knowing Supergirl and this young child are looking to avenge the death of her parent. If that is all you know, you can pick this up and you can have a great time. The art is absolutely magnificent. Like the creatures and stuff on the different planets are all very unique. Amongst the best art that you can imagine. And yeah, it really left a few moments in it where I really had like knots in my stomach. And yeah, cannot recommend reading that enough. But now we've arrived at the part of the program everyone's excited about, which is a discussion about the 4 Fear State titles that we had come out this week, which are Batman 113, Catwoman number 35, Nightwing number 84, and Batman Secret Files Miracle Molly number 1. If you haven't been reading Fear State, if you haven't been reading Tynan's run in general, essentially he really does seem to have spent a lot of time thinking about the psychological profile of like our current world in terms of paranoia, fear, and the social violence which we've seen kind of proliferate. And there's a cynical view that like he's introduced a lot of these characters to get like money and residuals and this, that, the other thing, which is, I don't personally like, if you look at the amount of money that like Brubaker and stuff got off of Cap. I'm just going to end the show here and do Fear State separately. That's what I'm going to do. All right. Goodbye.